I stood just beyond the marble pillar, bouquet still clutched in my trembling hand, as laughter echoed down the chapel hallway. The man marrying my daughter today, my new son-in-law, leaned into his groomsman and said, "Her mom's a fat pig in a tent." My breath caught. My knees went weak. After raising my daughter alone, after baking her wedding cake from scratch, after surviving the grief of losing my husband, this man saw me as nothing but a joke, and he thought I hadn't heard him. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The lace veil shimmered like spun sugar between Linda's trembling fingers. "Hold still, sweetheart," she murmured, adjusting the delicate edge so it caught the afternoon light streaming through the chapel window. Emily's eyes met hers in the mirror, bright, nervous, overflowing with hope. The kind of hope Linda hadn't felt since her husband passed. "You look perfect," Linda whispered, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Dad would have been proud." Emily laughed softly, brushing a tear away before it ruined her makeup. "Mom, you're gonna make me cry before I even walk down there." Linda chuckled, patting her daughter's arm. "Then I'd better step out before I do the same." She reached for her clutch on the side table and realized it wasn't there. "I must have left my purse in the hallway," she said, already halfway to the door. The hallway was quieter than she expected, muffled chatter seeping through from the reception area. The scent of roses and polished wood mixed with something else. Her own nerves. She walked past rows of photographs on the wall, glimpses of other couples who'd said their vows in the same place. It should have been comforting. Instead, a knot twisted low in her chest. As she rounded the corner, voices drifted from behind one of the marble pillars near the vestibule. Male laughter. A deep chuckle she recognized almost instantly. Brandon. She froze, mid-step. "Her mom's a fat pig in a tent," Brandon said, voice low but clear enough to slice through the air. "Did you see that dress? Lord help her." A groomsman barked out a laugh. "Dude, that's your mother-in-law." "Yeah," Brandon replied, grinning. "And she still thinks she's queen of the damn bakery. Guess she ate all the profits." Linda's breath caught so sharply it hurt. Her fingers dug into her clutch. The blood roared in her ears. And for a moment she thought she might actually be sick right there on the polished floor. The groomsman said something else. Something like, "That's cold, man." But she barely heard it. All she could feel was the tremor starting in her chest, radiating outward until her whole body shook. The man who'd sworn to love her daughter had just gutted her with a sentence. The music cue floated from inside the chapel. Soft, romantic strings. Guests murmured as they took their seats. Linda's heart stuttered. The ceremony was starting. She pressed herself against the marble, willing the blood to drain from her burning face. "Don't cry. Don't move. Don't let him see." But then Brandon's voice dropped again. Quieter. More calculated. "Anyway, it's just one day. I'll charm her later. She'll forget it by dessert." Something inside Linda snapped. Not loud. Not visible. But final. Like a door slamming shut. She exhaled shakily and stepped out from behind the pillar. Brandon turned. His smile faltered the instant he saw her. Color drained from his face. For the briefest second, Linda saw a flicker of panic behind his smug composure. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. He straightened his tie, flashed that polished grin, the one that fooled everyone but her, and said nothing. The wedding coordinator's voice echoed down the hall. "Positions, please. It's time." Linda didn't look away. She met his eyes, steady and unflinching, until he finally turned toward the chapel doors. Emily emerged from the dressing room, veil trailing, face aglow. "Mom, are you ready?" Linda swallowed the sour taste in her throat and nodded. "Right behind you, baby." They lined up at the entrance. Brandon waited at the altar, handsome and hollow in his tailored suit. The music swelled. Guests rose. Linda's hands felt cold against the bouquet she held. Every detail blurred. The soft murmur of vows, the rustle of satin, the glint of light on the ring she'd helped Emily choose. All she could hear over and over was his voice. Fat pig in a tent. When the priest asked who gave this woman to be married, Linda's lips moved automatically. Her mother, she said, though the words came out thin and brittle. Brandon glanced at her again. No smirk now, no warmth either. Just a single calculating look, as if he was already rewriting the moment in his head. Linda forced herself to smile for the photos, for her daughter, for the guests who would never guess the tremor underneath. But inside, something cold and steady began to form, an ember that would not go out. As the newlyweds walked hand in hand down the aisle, the crowd erupted in applause. Linda stayed seated, palms flat on her lap, watching the man who'd just insulted her walk away with her daughter. Her pulse slowed, her expression smoothed, but her eyes never left his back. He thought she hadn't heard. He thought wrong. The photographer's voice carried through the garden like an order more than a request. "Family, right here, please. Let's get that mother of the bride in closer." Linda stepped into place beside Brandon, the scent of his cologne thick in the warm Tennessee air. Her pulse thudded behind her ears. He smiled wide for the camera, white teeth, perfect posture, the very picture of charm. His arm slipped easily around Emily's waist and then, almost imperceptibly, brushed Linda's shoulder. She felt the weight of it like an insult disguised as affection. "Beautiful family," the photographer said. "Okay, big smiles." Click, flash. Linda's mouth moved into the right shape, but the muscles refused to cooperate beyond that. Her jaw ached from pretending. Brandon glanced sideways, his grin not faltering. "You good, Mom?" he murmured under his breath, just loud enough for her to hear. The word Mom felt deliberate, like mockery. "I'm fine," she replied evenly, though her throat was tight. "You should keep your focus on your wife." He tilted his head, eyes narrowing a fraction, the mask cracking for half a heartbeat. Then he turned back toward the photographer and said brightly, "We sure are one happy family, huh?" The guests laughed, assuming he meant the photo chaos. Linda stood still, arms at her sides, the applause and chatter blending into a dull roar around her. Emily beamed, so unguarded, so sure. The sunlight caught the sequins in her dress, throwing tiny sparks across the crowd. She leaned into Brandon as he kissed her cheek for the camera, completely unaware of the storm brewing behind her mother's smile. Linda watched her daughter laugh, a sound that had always warmed her. But now it cut. She wanted to step between them, shield her, say he's not who you think he is. Yet she couldn't. Not here, not today. Not with 100 people watching and Emily glowing like the center of a new universe. The clinking of silverware called everyone back inside for the toast. The reception hall was all golden lights and rustic charm, the kind of wedding Emily had dreamed of since she was a girl. Burlap runners, mason jars of white roses, a country band tuning up in the corner. Linda sat at the head table, trapped between Brandon and Kendra. Brandon rose, champagne glass in hand. "I just want to say," he began, his voice smooth, confident, practiced, "that marrying Emily is the best decision I ever made. She's beautiful, she's kind, and she puts up with my bad jokes." Laughter rippled through the room. He looked down the table, meeting Linda's gaze. "And I gotta thank her mom for raising such a catch." The crowd cheered, oblivious. Brandon lifted his glass in Linda's direction, smirking so slightly only she could see it. The bubbles in her drink shimmered as she stared at them, her throat closing. He was performing. Every word was theater, every gesture a trap. and everyone was eating it up. When the applause came, Linda pushed her chair back and stood. "Excuse me," she whispered to no one in particular. She walked out before the toast was even over. The sound of laughter followed her down the hall like static. Outside, the air was cool and damp, the garden lit with strings of amber lights swaying in the breeze. She found the stone fountain tucked beneath a row of magnolias and braced her hands on its edge, trying to steady her breath. Her reflection in the water looked older than she remembered. Tired, humiliated, furious. The crunch of gravel behind her made her turn. Kendra appeared, still holding her half-empty wine glass. "You disappeared fast. Thought maybe you'd drowned yourself in the punch bowl." Linda gave a humorless laugh. "That might have been less painful." Kendra's expression shifted. "What happened?" For a long moment, Linda said nothing. The music from inside floated through the open doors, soft, romantic, detached from reality. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling despite her effort to control it. "He called me a fat pig. Before the ceremony. I heard him." Kendra went utterly still. "You're joking." "I wish I were." Kendra's jaw tightened. The glass in her hand creaked faintly as her fingers clenched around the stem. That smug little bastard. Linda looked back toward the glow of the reception hall. Through the windows, she could see Brandon laughing with the groomsmen, arm around Emily's waist like nothing in the world could touch him. "He thinks it's funny," Linda said quietly. "He thinks I'll just smile and forget." Kendra set her glass on the fountain's rim, her voice low and steady. "Then he picked the wrong woman to underestimate." The fountain gurgled between them, the steady trickle of water masking the sudden edge in Kendra's tone. Linda met her friend's eyes, sharp, protective, unwavering, and something inside her solidified. The laughter from the hall rose again, muffled but clear. Brandon's voice carried above the others, full of ease and confidence. Linda's pulse slowed, her lips pressed together until the tremor stopped. "Enjoy it while you can," she whispered, more to herself than to Kendra. Because the next time he smiled at her, she promised herself, she'd be the one holding the power behind it. The music thumped softly beneath the chatter of guests and the clinking of glasses. The scent of vanilla cake and spilled champagne hung in the air. Sweet, heavy, almost nauseating. The reception had become a blur of polite laughter and blurred motion, all of it spinning around Linda like a carousel she couldn't step off. She sat alone at her table, half hidden near the corner where the light from the chandelier faded into amber shadow. The linen napkin on her lap had long since been folded and refolded into tight creases. Her plate was empty. She couldn't remember eating. Across the room, Brandon worked the crowd like a politician. He danced with Emily, dipped her theatrically as guests cheered, then clapped shoulders and traded jokes with groomsmen, his laughter booming through the space. Every gesture screamed confidence, control. The same charm that had fooled her daughter was now parading itself in front of everyone. Linda reached for her handbag and pulled out a small leather planner, its corners soft from years of bakery orders and family budgets. She flipped it open to a blank page, then began to write. Joint checking account, Bank of Tennessee, house title, both names, bakery, sole proprietor, but Emily's name listed as potential successor. Her pen moved fast, almost frantic, as if putting it all down could anchor her in something tangible. Each word steadied her heartbeat. Each line was a quiet declaration. I will not let him destroy what I built. A round of laughter erupted near the bar. Brandon had gathered a cluster of guests around him, glass raised high. Emily stood beside him, radiant, utterly entranced. He whispered something in her ear, and she swatted his arm playfully. Linda's stomach turned. Plotting a heist? Kendra's voice startled her. The woman slid into the chair beside her, lipstick slightly smudged, eyes sharp with protective concern. She held 2 glasses of white wine, setting one in front of Linda. "You look like you're doing math at a funeral." "I might be," Linda murmured. Kendra glanced at the open planner, then at Brandon across the room. "He's really laying it on thick." Linda capped her pen and closed the planner gently. "That's all it is. Thick." Kendra smirked. "You're planning something." Linda didn't answer. Instead, she pulled out her phone. The glow of the screen illuminated her face just enough to show the resolve settling in. Her thumbs moved quickly. 2. Angela Ruiz. "I need a meeting. Urgent." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Kendra leaned back, eyes narrowing. "That's your lawyer." "Estate attorney," Linda said simply, slipping the phone back into her bag. Kendra's lips curved into a knowing smile. "Good. About time." The band switched to a slow country song and guests drifted toward the dance floor in pairs. Brandon pulled Emily close, his hand low on her back, his expression soft enough to fool anyone watching. The way he looked at her would have melted hearts if Linda hadn't already seen the cruelty behind those eyes. She took a sip of the wine Kendra had brought her. It was too sweet, almost syrupy, but it grounded her long enough to breathe. The 2 women sat in silence for a moment, the air between them thick with shared understanding. Then, "Mom," Emily's voice rang out as she crossed the dance floor, her dress flowing, her cheeks flushed with happiness. She threw her arms around Linda's shoulders. "Isn't he perfect?" Linda's throat tightened. She wanted to shake her, to warn her, but Emily's innocence, her blind trust, stopped her cold. Instead, she smiled. The kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "He's everything you hoped for," she said softly. Emily didn't notice the pause. "I'm just so happy," she whispered, her eyes shining. "I can't believe how lucky I am." Linda nodded slowly. "Me neither." Brandon's voice carried over the music, loud, confident, already charming another group of guests. He didn't even glance in their direction. Emily kissed her mother's cheek and hurried back toward him, the train of her gown brushing against the floor like a whisper. Linda watched her go, fingers curling against the planner still resting in her lap. Kendra leaned forward, voice low. "You're not gonna let this go, are you?" Linda's gaze followed her daughter's silhouette, her face calm, her heartbeat anything but. "No," she said. "Not this time." She opened her planner again, the page still marked where she'd stopped. The ink glimmered faintly under the chandelier's light. Somewhere across the room, Brandon's laughter cut through the music like a knife. Linda didn't flinch. She drew a slow breath and added one more note to her list. "Meet Angela. First thing Monday." The page trembled just slightly beneath her hand, but her pen didn't. And for the first time that night, she didn't feel small. She felt dangerous. The steady hum of the city outside Angela Ruiz's law office was a far cry from the quiet rhythm of Linda's bakery. Glass walls, chrome accents, and the faint scent of citrus cleaner made the place feel more like a surgical suite than a workspace. Everything gleamed, especially Angela, poised behind her desk in a navy suit, a woman who exuded control like perfume. "Mrs. Palmer?" Angela greeted, rising to shake her hand. "It's been a while." "Linda," she corrected automatically. "I'm not here for estate maintenance this time." Angela's brow arched slightly as she gestured for Linda to sit. "All right. Tell me what's changed." Linda hesitated for only a second. Then she told her about the wedding, the overheard insult. The way Brandon had looked her dead in the eye after calling her a fat pig in a tent. The way he smiled through the photos, how he used her daughter's trust like a shield. Angela didn't interrupt. She listened, eyes sharp but unreadable, fingers steepled beneath her chin. When Linda finished, The silence between them hummed with the low whir of the office's air vents. "So you're not just angry," Angela said finally. "You're preparing." Linda met her gaze. "You know me well enough to know I don't prepare without reason." Angela nodded once, flipping open a thin folder. "Let's start with what he's connected to. Anything with your name or your daughter's." "The house," Linda said, her voice steady now. "They're both on the mortgage. The bakery's mine, officially. But Emily's name is listed as successor if I die. And the joint checking account." She exhaled, slow and heavy. "He's already asking about helping with the bills." Angela scribbled notes, her pen moving in precise, practiced strokes. "Classic first step. Financial integration. Once he's got a hand in your assets, he's got leverage. We'll start cutting those ties immediately." Linda stared out the window at the slow traffic on Commerce Street. She could see her reflection in the glass, older, lined, but still unbroken. "He thinks I'm too soft to see what he's doing." "That's his first mistake," Angela replied flatly. There was something calming in her efficiency. The way she pulled up forms, drafted new trusts, explained legal jargon like a weapon being assembled. It gave shape to Linda's fury, turned grief into structure, humiliation into motion. "Asset protection for the bakery," Angela murmured, typing briskly. "We'll move ownership into an independent trust, controlled only by you. Your daughter can still inherit it, but her husband won't touch a cent. The joint account, close it. Open a new one in your name only." "Done," Linda said. Angela printed the first document, slid it across the desk, and handed her a pen. "Sign here." The pen felt heavier than it should have. Linda hesitated just long enough to recognize what this moment was, the line between her old life and her next one. Then she signed. "Congratulations," Angela said softly. "You just took your first step back into control." Linda managed a tight smile. "Feels overdue?" Angela gathered the papers, slid them into a sleek folder, and looked up. "I'll have the filings done before close of business. Anything else I should know about?" "Emily doesn't know I'm here," Linda admitted. "I don't want to drag her into this until I have to." Angela nodded. "Understandable, but if he's as manipulative as you say, keep records. Emails, texts, financial requests, everything. Documentation wins cases." The office phone buzzed. Angela ignored it. Linda's own cell vibrated on the corner of the desk. "Kendra." She picked up. "Hey." Kendra's voice came through, tight with irritation. "You might want to look at Instagram. He just posted a video of himself at your bakery." Linda frowned. "What?" "He tagged the shop, filmed himself eating a cinnamon roll, and called it, quote, 'The future of Hayes family expansion.' Said your pastries were going to make him rich." Angela looked up from her paperwork. "That's bold." Linda's grip tightened around the phone. "Send me the link." "I already did," Kendra said. "He's using your business for attention, Linda. He's not even subtle about it." Linda's stomach went cold. "He doesn't know it yet," she said, voice steady as stone. "But that video just became Exhibit A." Angela's lips curved slightly. "I like how you think." Linda ended the call and slipped her phone into her purse. For the first time in months, her shoulders loosened. The fear was still there, but it had changed shape. It was no longer paralyzing. It was useful. She rose from her chair, the folder of fresh signatures tucked under her arm. Angela stood as well. "You're handling this smartly, Linda. Just stay quiet and deliberate. Let him underestimate you." "Oh, I intend to," Linda said, her voice low and calm. "That's what makes it fun." As she walked out of the office, the late afternoon sun slanted through the tall windows, turning the glass into mirrors. She caught her reflection again, steadier now, sharper. Behind her, her phone pinged once more. Brandon Hayes tagged you in a post. She didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, she smiled faintly to herself and stepped into the elevator whispering, "Keep smiling, Brandon. I'm coming for everything you think you own." The smell of yeast and sugar filled the air as the bakery's front lights flicked on. It was early, too early for customers, but Linda wanted the place quiet. Today wasn't about pastries. It was about protection. The closed sign hung firmly on the door while she sat behind the counter, a stack of crisp papers spread across the glass display case. The hum of the refrigeration unit was the only sound. Beside her, Kendra poured coffee into two mismatched mugs, eyes scanning the legal forms like she was reading a confession. "So," Kendra said, sliding a mug over. "This means the bakery belongs to the trust now? Officially?" Linda nodded, her voice calm. "It's not just mine. It's untouchable. Not by Brandon, not even by Emily, at least until this is over." Kendra whistled low. "You really are done playing nice." Linda's pen hovered over the signature line. "Nice got me laughed at behind a marble pillar," she said quietly. "This gets me peace." Angela had sent the papers first thing that morning, 3 bound copies of the legal transfer and an addendum to her will. The independent trust, airtight. Her daughter's name temporarily suspended from all joint financial privileges. It wasn't about punishment, it was protection. Linda signed the last page, the scratch of the pen deliberate, unhurried. Each signature was a barrier forming between her family and the man who thought he could slip into it. Kendra flipped through the remaining documents. "So I just notarized the whole set?" "That's what Angela said," Linda replied. "Witness signature and stamp on each section." Kendra reached into her purse, pulling out a sleek black notary seal. Her hands were steady, but her jaw was tight. "You sure you can hide this from Emily for now? She'll notice something missing." "She'll notice less if I stay quiet," Linda said. "She's still blind to who he is. She needs to see it herself before she'll believe it." Kendra pressed the seal onto the last page with a firm click. "Then let's make sure you're ready when she does." By mid-morning, Linda was at the courthouse. Papers stacked neatly in a cream folder, heels echoing down the polished tile hallway. Angela met her there, punctual as always, briefcase in hand and expression unreadable. "Everything signed?" Angela asked. Linda handed her the folder. "And notarized." Angela flipped through, nodding at the embossed seals. "Good. We'll file this under private trust protection. It'll be public record, but buried deep enough he'd have to dig for it." "I'm counting on his arrogance," Linda said. "He won't dig. He thinks I bake cookies and gossip with retirees." Angela allowed herself a faint smile. "Then he's about to learn what kind of woman runs a bakery that's still profitable after 30 years. They walked together to the filing desk. The clerk took the papers, stamped them with the heavy thunk of bureaucracy, and handed Linda a receipt. "That's it?" Linda asked softly. Angela nodded. "That's it. The bakery is no longer under your personal estate. You've officially outmaneuvered him." For the first time, Linda felt her chest ease. Not joy, just a steady kind of strength that came from finally building a wall high enough to keep predators out. Back home that afternoon, the kitchen table was covered with the rest of her paperwork. Wills, account changes, a thick manila envelope marked private addendum. The sun spilled through the window, cutting across the wood in narrow beams. Dust floated like gold flakes. Linda opened the new version of her will, scanning the clauses Angela had added. Emergency inheritance freeze. Automatic redirection of funds to charity if fraud is detected. No shared access until both parties pass review by trustee. It was precise, surgical, the kind of detail her late husband would have admired. She signed each amendment, then gathered everything and walked to her bedroom. The safe sat behind a row of old recipe binders, its keypad worn smooth from years of use. She keyed in the code, tucked the documents inside, and closed it with a decisive click. Her reflection in the glass door of the cabinet looked different. Still tired, still grieving, but not broken. Not anymore. The bakery phone on the nightstand buzzed once, then again. She ignored it at first, assuming it was a supplier. When it buzzed a third time, she picked it up. Unknown number. She hesitated, thumb hovering, then answered. A pause, soft static. Then a male voice, lazy and amused. Hey, Linda. Didn't know you were still up. Thought I'd check in. Family to family. Her blood went cold. Brandon. He chuckled, low and smooth. Emily's asleep. Just wanted to say, that post I made got a ton of traction. People love the bakery. You might see a bump in business. Linda said nothing. You're welcome, he added, that smirk dripping through the line. Then, click. The call ended. Linda lowered the phone slowly, her hand trembling only once before she caught it. Across the room, the safe gleamed dully in the lamplight. Inside, the future of her bakery and her revenge was locked tight. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a notification. Brandon Hayes mentioned you in a story. Linda opened Instagram and her stomach dropped. There he was, standing in front of her bakery, arm around Emily, captioned, "The new Hayes family empire begins here." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Then the faintest smile curved across her face. Not for long, she whispered. The ink on Linda's trust documents had barely dried when she found herself once again seated across from Angela Ruiz's immaculate desk. The air in the office was cool, sterile, smelling faintly of paper, coffee, and quiet power. The blinds were half drawn against the sharp Tennessee sunlight, striping Angela's desk in lines of light and shadow. Angela looked up from her monitor. You're sure you want to go through with this next part? Linda folded her hands, steady but resolute. Yes. I've spent half my life building something for Emily's future. I'm not letting her husband sink his claws into it. Angela gave a slow nod. Then let's make it official. She reached for a thin leather folder and opened it, revealing the first set of draft documents. We'll revise your will entirely. Any existing clause that could be interpreted as benefiting Brandon Hayes will be struck. Inheritance, trust access, discretionary disbursements, gone. Linda let the words sink in like a balm. Good. And, Angela continued, her tone shifting slightly, you mentioned wanting to do something in your late husband's memory? Linda's eyes softened. He volunteered at the women's shelter downtown, used to bring fresh bread every Saturday. Her voice wavered just enough to make her swallow. I want a donation set aside in his name. The Palmer Fund for Renewal. Angela jotted a note, her movements crisp. A philanthropic clause, funded directly from your estate at the time of passing. Amount? 200,000, Linda said. That should keep their doors open for a few more winters. Angela's eyes flicked up. You're a good woman, Linda. Strategic, but good. Linda smiled faintly. I'm done being strategic for everyone else's sake. This one's for me. Angela turned another page. Now, about Emily's share. I recommend a delayed inheritance clause, something that pauses full access to her inheritance if she remains married to Brandon. Linda blinked. You can do that? Oh, yes, Angela said, almost dryly. It's a behavioral clause. You're not punishing her. You're ensuring she's stable and protected before she manages significant funds. If her marital status changes, she gets full access immediately. For a long moment, Linda said nothing. The words, if her marital status changes, hung between them like a quiet dare. Finally, she nodded. Do it. Angela marked the section with her signature green pen. I'll need a witness signature. You trust Kendra? With my life, Linda said. Good. I'll have her come in this afternoon. By 3 o'clock, Kendra was seated in the same chair, reading glasses perched on her nose, expression hard as flint. You really went and rewired your whole life, she murmured, flipping to the page marked with a sticky tab. Had to, Linda said simply. He's not getting a dime of my sweat. Kendra pressed her pen to the signature line, signing with a flourish before setting it down. You know, this is the first time I've ever notarized a woman who's building a legal fortress around her own sanity. Then pour yourself a drink after this, Angela said dryly. You've earned it. Kendra smirked, then turned serious again. You think Emily's gonna find out soon? Linda's gaze flicked to the window, where the Nashville skyline gleamed in late afternoon haze. Not yet, but she will, when she needs to. Angela gathered the stack of signed forms, tapping them into a neat pile. All right, we'll file these tonight. By morning, the will, trust, and donation fund will all be locked in. Linda exhaled slowly. The room suddenly felt lighter. That evening, back at her house, the first thing she did was sit down at her computer. The glow of the screen reflected in her glasses as she logged into every account she owned, the bakery's point-of-sale system, her bank, utilities, even her cloud storage. Password after password changed. Each keystroke felt like sealing another window shut against a coming storm. When she finally finished, she leaned back, letting her eyes rest on the framed wedding photo of Emily on the bookshelf. Her daughter's smile was pure, full of trust. It twisted something deep in Linda's chest. The phone rang, breaking the silence. The caller ID flashed Emily. Linda hesitated, then answered. Hey, sweetheart. Hey, Mom, Emily said cheerfully. Brandon was just saying, you've got all that estate stuff going on with the bakery and the house, right? He offered to help you sort through it. He's great with numbers. Linda's knuckles whitened around the phone. He's... what? Emily laughed, oblivious. He says it's a family thing now, right? I mean, we're all one family. Linda stared at the blinking cursor on her computer screen. Every password, every clause, every layer of defense suddenly felt more justified than ever. Sweetheart, she said carefully, forcing her tone to stay calm. You tell Brandon not to worry about a thing. I've already handled it. Oh, Emily said, a touch surprised. You have? I have, Linda said, completely. She could almost hear the confusion in her daughter's silence, followed by that soft, hopeful tone again. He just wants to be involved, Mom. He's trying. Linda smiled faintly, though her voice came out smooth as glass. And I'm trying to make sure you both have something worth being involved in. They said their goodnights, Emily's warmth still bleeding through the line. When the call ended, the house was quiet again, only the low hum of the refrigerator and the whisper of distant traffic. Linda opened her desk drawer and placed her husband's old fountain pen on top of the new will, its ink still glistening slightly. Her phone buzzed once more, this time a text from Kendra. You sleep better knowing the wolf's locked outside? Linda typed back. He doesn't even know there's a door yet. She set the phone down and stared at the safe across the room, the sound of the clock ticking softly beside it. For the first time since the wedding, she didn't feel cornered. She felt armed. The autumn morning light bled gold through the front windows of the bakery, dust motes swirling in the air like tiny ghosts. The scent of cinnamon rolls and brewed coffee filled the room, but the warmth of it didn't touch Linda. Not today. She was at the counter, hands busy rolling dough, but her mind elsewhere, on the call from last night, on the way Brandon's name had slid into the conversation like a snake through grass. Her movements were steady, deliberate, but the silence in the shop was too loud. The bell over the door jingled. Emily stepped in, her hair pulled into a loose bun, the sparkle of her wedding band catching the morning light. Hey, Mom, she said, with a smile that was a little too bright, a little too rehearsed. Linda wiped her hands on her apron. Morning, sweetheart. Emily leaned against the counter. You've been hard to reach lately. Brandon says you've been distant. Linda arched a brow, keeping her tone neutral. Distant. He thinks maybe you're still upset about something, Emily continued, fidgeting with the strap of her purse. He feels like you don't like him, Mom. You barely talk to him anymore. Linda reached for the tray of croissants cooling by the window. The air smelled of butter and sugar, her comfort zone, but even that sweetness couldn't soften what was coming. That's an interesting interpretation, she said, setting the tray down. Emily sighed. Don't do that thing where you act like nothing's wrong. It's cold, Mom. You used to be so warm with us. Linda paused, looking at her daughter carefully. With us or with him? Emily hesitated, her fingers tightening around her purse strap. Both, I guess. Brandon says you look at him like he's something stuck to your shoe. The line made Linda's mouth twitch, a sharp, involuntary flicker of irony, but she quickly masked it. Maybe he's noticing how I look at the truth. Emily frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Linda leaned on the counter, the wooden surface cool under her palms. Emily, is he ever cruel to you? The question landed like a weight between them. The faint sound of the oven timer clicking over punctuated the silence. Emily blinked. What? No. God, Mom, where's that coming from? I'm asking, Linda said softly, careful not to raise her voice. Does he ever make you feel small? Joke at your expense? Even when no one else is around? Emily's cheeks flushed. Why would you even? She shook her head quickly, cutting herself off. He's not perfect, okay? Nobody is. But he loves me. He's trying. Trying, Linda echoed, the word like ash in her mouth. Emily straightened, bracing herself. You're always judging him. Ever since the wedding. You barely talk to him at family dinners. You ignore his messages. Linda exhaled sharply, setting down her rolling pin. Emily, stop. Her daughter froze, startled by the authority in her tone. Linda wiped her hands on a towel and stepped around the counter. She stood close enough now to see the fine lines of tension around Emily's eyes, the exhaustion that came from something deeper than a few late nights. He called me a fat pig, Linda said quietly, before you walked down the aisle. The words hung there, unadorned, impossible to soften. Emily's lips parted, but no sound came out. What? She whispered. He was with one of his groomsmen, laughing. He said I looked like a fat pig in a tent. Then he saw me standing there. He didn't deny it. The silence that followed was almost violent. The hum of the refrigerator filled it, cold and mechanical. Emily's eyes darted back and forth across her mother's face, searching for any hint of exaggeration, any flicker of dishonesty. But there was none. That's not true, Emily finally said, her voice breaking. He's not like that. Linda's expression didn't change. I heard him, Emily. Her daughter's breathing quickened. You must have misunderstood. Maybe it was someone else. His voice, Linda said, her tone calm, steady. I know what I heard. Emily stepped back, shaking her head, tears threatening. Why are you telling me this now? Why are you trying to ruin things? Because he's already ruining you, Linda said. That stopped her. Emily's hand flew to her mouth, and for a moment the defiance in her face cracked. Linda softened her voice. Sweetheart, I didn't want to tell you like this. But pretending it didn't happen, it's been eating at me. Emily turned away, gripping the edge of the counter, shoulders rising and falling with quick, shallow breaths. You hate him, she said finally, voice raw. You've always hated him. Linda didn't argue. I see him clearly, that's all. Emily spun back toward her, eyes wet, jaw tight. You don't know him like I do. No, Linda said, her voice low. But I know men like him. The clock above the doorway ticked once, loud and final. Emily stood frozen, caught between anger and something like fear. Please, Linda said softly. Just tell me he's never said anything cruel to you. Emily didn't answer. She just stared, eyes wide, unblinking, as if the question itself had cracked something she wasn't ready to look at. Her phone buzzed in her purse. The name Brandon lit up the screen. Linda saw it. Emily saw her see it. And neither of them spoke. The bakery was empty except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the clock. Afternoon light slanted across the floor, catching the powdered sugar dusting the prep table like a thin layer of frost. In the back office, behind the swinging door and the smell of coffee gone cold, Emily sat hunched in a chair. Her face was pale and blotchy, mascara smudged under her eyes. The world outside that tiny room had shrunk to four walls, a paper calendar, and her mother's quiet breathing. I didn't want you to be right, Emily whispered, voice splintered. I didn't want to believe it. Linda didn't move. She sat across from her daughter, elbows resting on her knees, hands clasped loosely. She'd expected denial, anger, anything but this soft, trembling collapse. Emily pressed her palms against her eyes. He does that sometimes. The jokes. Says things that sound funny until they don't. Linda's voice was barely above a whisper. What kind of things? Emily looked up, eyes glistening. About my weight, my clothes, the bakery food I bring home. If I skip a gym day, he'll pat my stomach and call it my taste tester badge. A broken laugh escaped her, sharp and painful. And I'd laugh too. Because it was easier than fighting. Linda's chest tightened. She wanted to speak, to curse his name out loud, to drag him into the light for what he'd done. But she didn't. Not yet. She simply stood and walked to her daughter, kneeling in front of her. Emily's hands fell into her lap. Linda took them gently, their fingers cold against each other's. You don't deserve that, Linda said. Her voice trembled once, then steadied. Not from him, not from anyone. Emily shook her head, tears streaming now. Don't tell anyone, Mom, please. Not Kendra, not Angela. I can't handle people knowing. I just need time to think. Linda's instinct screamed to fight, to protect, to act. But she knew her daughter wasn't ready for the truth in daylight. So she did the only thing that wouldn't push her further away. She held her. Emily buried her face against her mother's shoulder, sobbing quietly as Linda's arms came around her. The smell of flour and vanilla clung to both of them, the scent of a simpler time when love was enough to fix things. Linda's eyes stayed dry, unblinking, because she'd already cried her tears for this man, just not here, not now. When the sobs finally faded into silence, Emily pulled back. Promise me you won't make it worse, she whispered. I promise, Linda said softly. Emily exhaled shakily, then stood. I need to go home. He'll wonder where I am. Linda nodded, though the words made her stomach twist. Call me when you get there. I will. After she left, the bakery felt heavier, as if the air itself was bearing witness to what had just been confessed. Linda stayed in the office for a long time, staring at the faint damp patch on her shoulder where Emily's tears had soaked through her blouse. Then she reached for her phone. Angela answered on the second ring. You sound like you've been through something. Linda's voice was flat. Emily knows. He's been cruel to her too. Angela's tone shifted instantly, professional, calm. Don't confront him yet. Don't even hint that you know more. Leave everything as is. Watch. Document. The moment he crosses a legal line, we'll move. I can't just sit still, Linda said quietly. You can, Angela replied, because sitting still is how you win this kind of war. When the call ended, Linda returned to the front of the bakery. The world outside had turned dusky, the sky bruised purple through the glass. She moved automatically, pulling flour, eggs, sugar, her hands finding comfort in the rhythm she'd mastered over decades. She baked 6 dozen blueberry muffins without tasting a single one. The oven's warmth pressed against her like a heartbeat, steady and relentless. Each batch went into a cooling tray, each motion precise, mechanical. It wasn't about muffins, it was about not falling apart. By the time the last tray was done, the bakery was quiet again. The scent of sugar and butter filled the air like a memory she didn't want. She was cleaning the counter when the bell over the front door jingled. Linda looked up. Brandon stood there, wearing his easy grin, hands in his pockets. His suit jacket was unbuttoned, his hair perfectly styled, casual arrogance wrapped in charm. "Evening, Linda," he said smoothly, eyes sweeping over the trays of muffins. "Heard business is booming. Thought I'd stop by and see the magic for myself." Linda didn't answer. She watched him take a slow step inside, the smirk playing at his lips like a secret he thought she'd never uncover. Behind the counter, her hand rested on the rolling pin, not as a threat, just as something solid to hold. Brandon's smile widened. "You look surprised to see me." Linda's voice came out quiet and even. "I'm not surprised by anything you do anymore." He chuckled, taking another step closer. "That's good. I like women who learn fast." The warmth in the bakery seemed to vanish. The next morning, Linda opened the bakery earlier than usual, just to have a moment of calm before the first rush. The world outside was quiet, still wrapped in dawn. The smell of coffee grounds and fresh dough steadied her nerves, grounding her back in the only sanctuary she had left. By 9, the shop was alive again. Chatter, laughter, the sound of milk steaming under Kendra's steady hand at the espresso machine. The bell over the door jingled every few minutes, bringing in regulars with sleepy smiles and newcomers with curious eyes. And then, the sound that made Linda's stomach tighten. That voice. "Morning. Everyone." Brandon's tone carried across the bakery, too loud, too confident, like he owned the place. Linda froze for half a second, then straightened her apron and kept wiping the counter. He strolled in wearing his usual performance: designer jeans, crisp white shirt, charm weaponized to perfection. "Smells amazing in here," he said, flashing his smile to the customers. "You all know this woman's the best baker in Nashville, right? My mother-in-law. Everyone." Heads turned. People chuckled politely. Kendra's eyes narrowed as she handed off a latte, her jaw working as she muttered, "Oh, hell." Linda forced a polite smile, the kind you wear when someone steps on your toes and pretends it's affection. "Brandon," she said evenly, "we're a little busy this morning." "That's great," he said, undeterred. "Busy means growth. And speaking of growth," he stepped closer, leaning one elbow casually against the counter. "I've been thinking about the brand, your bakery. You've got potential to expand. Merchandise, online sales, maybe even a second location." Linda blinked slowly. "Is that so?" "Absolutely." He grinned at the customers within earshot. "You all know she's famous for her pies. Imagine those shipped nationwide. Palmer's pies, handmade, heart-made, family-owned." Kendra's hand froze mid-wipe on the counter. Linda said nothing. She just listened, her expression unreadable. Brandon mistook her silence for interest and leaned in, lowering his voice. "You and I could make this something big, Linda. Real money. Emily and I talked about it. She's on board. Think of it as family entrepreneurship." Linda finally looked up at him. Her voice was calm, smooth, practiced. "You're talking about my bakery like it's your next stock investment." "Investment, legacy. Call it what you want." he said, shrugging. Either way, it's ours now, right? Kendra's eyes shot up. She nearly dropped the steaming pitcher she was holding. Linda's lips curved. Not quite a smile, but close enough to fool the audience he was performing for. You might want to be careful saying that in public, she said. He laughed lightly, brushing it off. I'm just thinking out loud. Linda reached for a pie box from the display case, sliding it toward him. Then think quieter. Some of us are trying to work. Kendra turned away, biting down a laugh as she busied herself at the espresso machine again. Brandon chuckled, still basking in the attention of anyone watching. You've got a sharp tongue, Linda. Must be where Emily gets it. She gets her patience from me too, Linda said, tone flat. But mine's shorter. For a moment the charm faltered. He blinked, his grin slipping just slightly. Then it came back. Forced. Tighter. Fair enough, he said, reaching into his wallet. I'll take a pie. Apple. For the house. Linda rang it up, wordless, watching him pull out a crisp $50 bill like it was some grand gesture. Keep the change, he said, winking. She slid the box toward him. Oh, I intend to. He left with that same confident strut, pausing at the door to wave at the customers. Best bakery in town, he called. Run by family you can trust. The bell jingled behind him. Kendra let out a long breath, her voice low. If you ever need an alibi, I know how to hide a body. Linda smirked faintly, but her voice was steel. He's already burying himself. That night, the bakery closed early. Linda sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea that had gone cold, the glow from her phone lighting the darkened room. Her hands trembled just slightly as she scrolled through her messages. None from Emily. None from him. The silence felt wrong. Across town, Emily stood in the quiet of her apartment bedroom, the overhead light flickering as she folded laundry that wasn't hers. A gym bag sat open on the bed. Brandon's. She reached inside for a stray sock, but her fingers brushed something solid. A second phone. Her pulse jumped. She looked toward the closed bathroom door. The sound of running water masked her breathing. Emily turned the phone over in her hands, frowning. It wasn't locked. The screen lit up instantly, notifications flooding in. A cascade of messages. Dozens of them. Photos, names, hearts. She scrolled once, then again. Each message worse than the last. A woman's photo, half-dressed, smiling. Another voice message labeled last night was perfect. Her knees nearly gave out. The shower shut off. Emily's breath caught as she dropped the phone back into the bag and backed away, her mind spinning, her heart breaking in silent panic. Brandon's voice drifted out of the bathroom. Hey, babe, you okay out there? Emily swallowed, gripping the edge of the dresser to stay upright. Yeah, she said, her voice barely audible. Fine. Good, he said, cheerful again. Order us dinner. I'll be out in a minute. She stared at the gym bag, her reflection trembling in the mirror above it. The truth was sitting 3 feet away, buzzing with every new message. Emily's phone lit up then, a message from her mother. Linda. You home safe? Emily typed back with shaking hands. Yes, everything's fine. But her eyes stayed locked on the other phone as it buzzed again, lighting up the room with someone else's name. The apartment was too quiet. Emily stood in the living room, the second phone gripped tight in her trembling hands. The air smelled faintly of Brandon's cologne, clean, sharp, suffocating. She could hear him humming softly in the bathroom, the sound of running water masking her heartbeat. She didn't know how long she'd been staring at the screen. The evidence was endless. Texts, photos, voice notes, each one slicing through her like paper cuts that wouldn't stop bleeding. She scrolled until her vision blurred, until every message started to sound the same. You're perfect. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again. The bathroom door opened. Brandon stepped out, a towel draped casually around his waist, his grin as easy as always. "Hey," he said, rubbing his hair dry. "You didn't order dinner yet?" Emily looked up at him, the phone heavy in her hand. "No," she said, her voice flat. He cocked his head. "Something wrong?" Her fingers tightened around the phone. "Whose is this?" Brandon's eyes flicked down to it, then back up. Too fast, too smooth. "That? Oh, just an old work phone. I use it for clients sometimes." "Clients," she repeated, her tone sharp enough to draw blood. "You mean the women you've been sleeping with?" He froze. Just a flicker. Then the performance began. He laughed. "Emily, what the hell are you talking about?" Her throat felt raw. "Don't lie to me. I saw everything, the messages, the pictures." He stepped closer, still smiling, still pretending. "You're being dramatic again. You probably clicked on something you don't understand. Half those are spam." "Don't!" she snapped, her voice shaking. "Don't you dare gaslight me right now." For a moment, something flashed in his eyes. Irritation, maybe even fear. But he covered it with another hollow chuckle. "Jesus, you sound crazy. My wife, going through my stuff, inventing stories in her head." "I'm not inventing anything," she cried, holding the phone up like a weapon. "Do you want me to read them to you? Because I can." He smirked. "Go ahead." Her hand trembled, but she unlocked the screen and began. "Kara, July 22nd. You taste like sin, baby." Brandon's jaw tightened. She scrolled down. "Melissa, September 4th. Next time I'll wear your shirt to bed." Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. "Rachel, last night. I can still smell you on my skin." The silence that followed was brutal. Brandon's expression darkened, the charm finally peeling off. "You done?" "No," Emily whispered. "But I wish I was." He took a step toward her, his tone colder now. "You had no right to go through my stuff." "You had no right to humiliate me," she shot back. "You had no right to stand in front of my family and pretend to be something you're not." For the first time, his composure cracked. "You want to fight? Fine. Go ahead. Call your mom. Cry to her. Tell her poor little Emily's husband flirted with some women online. See how far that gets you." Emily stared at him in disbelief. "That's all this is to you? Flirting?" He snorted. "You don't get it. This is how the world works. Everyone flirts. You're just too uptight to handle it." The words hit harder than any slap. Emily's chest heaved, her voice breaking through the tremor. "You're disgusting." Something flickered in his face. Rage, sharp and fleeting. Before he turned away, grabbing his clothes off the chair. "You know what? I'm not doing this." "Brandon!" He spun toward her, his expression venomous. "You're lucky I even married you." The words landed like a slap. Then he was gone. Shirt half-buttoned, keys in hand, the door slamming so hard it rattled the frame. Emily stood frozen, her breath shallow. The silence crashing down like a wave. The second phone buzzed once in her hand. A new message. She didn't even look. Within minutes, she was out the door, coat half-zipped, tears streaking her face as she drove through the city toward the one place that still felt safe. When she arrived at Linda's, she didn't knock. She just walked in, sobbing. Linda was in the kitchen, halfway through washing a baking tray. The sound of her daughter's crying made her drop the dishcloth immediately. "Emily?" "He?" Emily gasped for breath, shaking. "He's been cheating, Mom, for months. With—" She couldn't finish. Linda caught her before she fell apart completely, arms wrapping around her. "It's all right," she whispered. "It's all right." Emily clung to her, trembling. "You were right," she sobbed. "You were right about everything." Linda didn't say I told you so. She didn't say anything at all. She just held her tighter, one hand smoothing her daughter's hair, her other gripping the back of her sweater like she was anchoring them both. Time blurred. The house was silent except for the faint sound of rain against the windows. Eventually, Emily cried herself into exhausted sleep on the couch, her head in her mother's lap. Linda sat perfectly still, staring out at the dark yard, her expression calm but unreadable. When the phone rang, she reached for it carefully, not waking her daughter. The caller ID flashed Angela Ruiz. Linda. Angela's voice came through, steady but tense. You'd better sit down. Linda's grip tightened. What happened? Angela hesitated. It's about Brandon. Something just came across my desk. Linda didn't move for a long moment after hanging up with Angela. The house was dim, the rain outside tracing soft patterns against the kitchen window. Emily slept fitfully on the couch, one hand still curled in the fabric of her mother's sweater like a child afraid to let go. When Linda finally spoke, her voice was low. You picked the wrong family to play with, Brandon. By sunrise, the plan was already in motion. Angela worked fast. Her email arrived at 7:14 a.m., a digital shield forged overnight. Temporary financial freeze initiated. Brandon Hayes flagged and restricted from all joint account access. Linda read the words twice, her chest rising with something that felt like quiet vindication. She texted back. Good. Let him find out the hard way. The world outside was gray and still damp when Emily woke. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her voice hoarse. I can't go back there, she whispered. Linda handed her a mug of coffee and a soft blanket. You're not going anywhere near him, she said. You'll stay here. We'll sort everything out. Emily's gaze flickered. Shame, relief, disbelief. I don't even know where to start. You start, Linda said gently, by breathing, and by not answering his calls. Across town, the storm was starting to reach Brandon. His first text came mid-morning. Smooth, apologetic, crafted like bait. Brandon. Baby, can we talk? I messed up. Please don't overreact. Then another. Brandon. You're being dramatic. I love you. Come home. Emily stared at her phone from across the kitchen table, eyes rimmed red. He just keeps texting. Block him, Linda said, without looking up from her laptop. He's fishing to see how much control he still has. Kendra showed up not long after, clutching her purse and a tablet like she was heading to battle. Heard from Angela, she said, sweeping into the bakery. Let's talk damage control. The three of them sat in the office, laptops open, coffee cups half drained. Kendra typed furiously, muttering to herself. New passwords for your POS system, new cloud logins, lock down your online banking. I'm adding two-step authentication on everything. He won't even be able to order a muffin without a code. Emily watched from the corner, her shoulders slumped. I didn't think he'd ever... Kendra cut her off gently. Sweetheart, that man thought charisma was currency. Now he's broken both. Linda allowed herself a small, humorless smile. You always know what to say. That's because I practice on idiots, Kendra said. He's just another one on the list. By afternoon, the bakery's systems were fully secured. Every login, every access point, locked tight. Linda walked through the shop, checking windows, the back door, the register. The air smelled of coffee and lemon cleaner, a little too sharp. She hated that she felt watched even here. The bell above the door jingled once, startling her. But it was just a delivery driver. Still, she couldn't shake the unease. That night, as she was closing up, she noticed the same sedan idling across the street. Dark windows, engine running, headlights dimmed. Her pulse kicked up. She stepped to the side window and peered out just as Kendra walked up behind her, holding a tray of pastries. You okay? Car's been sitting there 10 minutes, Linda said. Kendra frowned. You want me to call Pete? Linda didn't hesitate. Yes? Officer Pete Langston showed up 15 minutes later, his cruiser's headlights washing the street in blue and white. He was a solid man. Calm, competent, the kind of presence that steadied a room just by walking into it. He tapped on the sedan's window. The driver, some kid barely out of high school, mumbled about waiting for someone. Pete let him go with a warning, but when he turned back, his expression was all business. Keep your lights on at night, he told Linda, and install cameras on the back of the property. If that guy's connected to Brandon, I'll know by morning. Thank you, Pete, she said. He nodded once. You did the right thing locking things down. He's the kind of man who gets mean when he realizes he's powerless. When she got home, Linda went straight to the hardware store's website and ordered a full camera setup, motion sensors, live feed, everything. She spent the next 2 hours installing them with methodical precision, one by the back gate, one facing the driveway, one overlooking the front porch. Emily watched from the couch, a blanket wrapped tight around her shoulders. You think he'll come here? I think he'll try something, Linda said, but he won't get far. The house felt different now. Wired, guarded, deliberate. Every light that flickered outside caught Linda's eye. Every passing car set her teeth on edge. Around midnight, as she finally sat down with a cup of tea gone lukewarm, her phone buzzed again. A voicemail. No caller ID. She hesitated before pressing play. Brandon's voice spilled through the speaker, low, measured, almost amused. You can play whatever game you want, Linda, but you don't get to turn my wife against me. You think you're in control? You're not. You've got no idea what you're up against. A pause. Then softer. You should have stayed in your kitchen, baking your cookies. The line clicked dead. Linda sat perfectly still, staring at the phone on the table, her reflection caught in the dark screen. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the slow, steady tick of the clock. Then she whispered, I'm not the one who should be afraid. It was just after midnight when the pounding started. 3 sharp knocks, then another, louder. The kind that rattled the glass in the front door and sent the porch light flickering. Linda was already awake. She'd been sitting in the living room armchair, robe wrapped tight around her, the faint hum of the security monitor flickering beside her. Emily had fallen asleep on the couch again, a half-finished mug of tea cooling on the table. The knocks came again, this time followed by a voice. Linda. Brandon's voice, deep and angry, cut through the quiet like a blade. Open the door. Linda's pulse slowed instead of quickening. Her mind went still. She stood, walked to the doorway, and looked through the peephole. He was there, disheveled, hair damp with sweat or rain, his once slick charm stripped away. He banged his fist against the glass. You think you can cut me off? You think you can keep my wife from me? Emily stirred on the couch, her eyes blinking open. Mom? She whispered, voice shaky. Linda didn't turn around. Stay where you are, she said quietly. Brandon's shadow loomed larger on the frosted glass. I know she's in there. Emily. The sound of her name made Emily's breath catch. She rose halfway off the couch. He's here? Linda nodded once, calm as stone. Yes. And he's leaving soon. She walked to the kitchen phone, pressed the single button labeled Officer Pete. It rang twice. Langston. It's Linda Palmer, she said evenly. He's here, pounding on my front door. Pete's tone changed instantly. Lock the door, stay away from it, I'm 2 minutes out. Understood. She hung up, the calm in her voice almost frightening even to herself. Outside, Brandon's tone turned meaner. You think you can hide behind your lawyer and your little bakery? I built this family? Linda's voice was soft but clear as she called back through the door. No, Brandon, You tried to buy it. There's a difference. A porch light from the neighbor's house flicked on. Curtains shifted. Somewhere down the block, a dog started barking. Then the blue and red glow cut across the street, flashing lights slicing through the night. Pete's cruiser rolled up, gravel crunching beneath the tires. Brandon stepped back as Pete climbed out, his hand resting on his holster, but his voice measured. "Evening, Mr. Hayes. You might want to explain why you're here screaming on a widow's porch in the middle of the night." Brandon's voice rose. "She's hiding my wife. You can't tell me I can't see her?" Pete's expression didn't waver. "I can tell you you're trespassing, and if you don't leave right now, I'll tell you you're under arrest." Linda stood at the window, Emily's hand gripping hers tight. Through the glass, she watched the man who had once pretended to love her daughter turn into what he really was: small, desperate, cornered. Emily trembled beside her. "He's not going to stop." "He will," Linda said, her voice steady. "He'll stop when he has no power left to swing." Outside, Brandon's chest heaved as he glared at the officer, but something in Pete's stance, calm, immovable, finally broke him. Brandon stepped back, muttering under his breath. "This isn't over," he spat. Pete's reply was cool. "It is for tonight." Brandon turned, storming toward his car. The headlights flared bright for a moment, then disappeared into the dark. Pete stayed on the porch, talking quietly into his radio before glancing toward the window. Linda gave a small nod of thanks. He tapped the brim of his cap in acknowledgement. Inside, Emily collapsed against the wall, shaking. "He looked insane, Mom. I've never seen him like that." Linda drew her into a hug, her voice low but unshaken. "That's what happens when someone like him realizes the game's up." By morning, Angela had already called, efficient as ever. "I'm finalizing the restraining order, emergency filing. You'll both be protected within 24 hours. Linda stared out the kitchen window at the dew clinging to the grass, her reflection faint in the glass. "Make sure it sticks," she said quietly. "He's not just angry. He's unraveling." "I will," Angela promised. "You did everything right." Later that day, the bakery staff gathered for their morning briefing. Kendra read from a handwritten list taped near the register. Emergency numbers: Officer Pete, Angela Ruiz, local shelter. She looked up at the younger employees, her tone sharp. "If that man so much as breathes near this shop, you call someone. Don't play hero." They nodded, eyes wide. Linda stood behind the counter, her posture calm, voice steady. "We don't let fear run the place. We run it." By the afternoon rush, the bakery buzzed with life again, music, laughter, the soft hum of normalcy. To anyone else, it looked like an ordinary day. But to Linda, it felt like holding the line. That evening, as the last customer left, she switched off the lights and stood in the glow of the closed sign. The street outside was quiet again. The cameras blinked their small red lights, a rhythm she found strangely comforting. Her phone buzzed once more. A voicemail. No number. She hesitated, then pressed play. Brandon's voice, soft this time, almost pleading. "You think you've beaten me? You haven't. You can't erase me, Linda. Not from her. Not from this family." A pause. The sound of his breath close to the microphone. "See you soon?" The message ended. Linda stared at the screen for a long moment, her reflection cold and steady in the dark glass. Then she reached for the phone, hit save evidence, and set it aside. The fear never came. The courthouse air felt colder than it should have been that morning. Sterile, echoing, too still. Emily clutched the folder in her hands as though it contained her breath, her pulse, her future. Inside were her divorce papers, notarized and pristine. Linda stood beside her in the marble hallway, the quiet hum of fluorescent lights filling the silence. "You don't have to do this today," she said softly. Emily looked up. Her face was pale but steady. "If I wait, he wins." Those 6 words hit Linda harder than she expected. For the first time since the wedding, her daughter didn't sound fragile. She sounded resolute. At 9:03 a.m., Emily signed the petition for dissolution of marriage. Her signature was slow, deliberate. When she slid the pen back across the counter, she exhaled for the first time in months. "It's done," she said quietly. Angela Ruiz was already waiting outside her office by the time they arrived. She was dressed in a tailored black suit, hair pinned back, eyes sharp as glass. "The papers are filed," she confirmed. "Now we play defense. He'll come for attention first, then for blood." She was right. By noon, Brandon's social media exploded. Long, self-pitying posts written like a script for sympathy. "My wife was manipulated. Her mother's controlling everything. Family doesn't mean much when greed gets in the way." And then came the threats. Texts, emails, and voicemails flooded Emily's phone, each message uglier than the last. "You'll regret this. You'll have nothing when I'm done. You think your mom can protect you?" Linda's patience broke at the third one. She marched into Angela's office with a thumb drive, her face carved from stone. "Everything you need," she said, setting it on the desk. "Screenshots, voice recordings, even the late-night voicemail where he tells me to stay in my kitchen." Angela plugged it in immediately. "Excellent. I'll build him his own noose." Over the next few days, the case took shape like a fortress being built brick by brick. Angela worked around the clock, drafting motions, compiling evidence, filing emergency injunctions. Every threat Brandon made, every false claim online, every time he used Emily's name, it all became ammunition. But Brandon wasn't done. 3 days after being served, he hired an attorney from downtown, a slick man named Carter Bloom, who thought intimidation was a strategy. Their first meeting was tense. Carter leaned back in his chair, smirking at Angela across the table. "This could all go away if your client stops playing victim and reconciles." Angela didn't blink. "This meeting is recorded. Rephrase that." Carter's smile faltered. "You really want to drag this out? You'll ruin her reputation." Angela leaned forward, her tone surgical. "She's divorcing a serial cheater with documented harassment, emotional abuse, and fraud under his name. If anyone's reputation is ruined here, it's not hers." Linda sat across from them, hands folded neatly in her lap, watching every flicker of discomfort in the man's expression. When he finally looked at her, she smiled, not warmly, but with quiet satisfaction. The intimidation attempt failed. Completely. Outside the courthouse, Emily leaned against the railing, the wind whipping through her hair. "He's not getting to me anymore," she said, almost surprised at her own strength. "It's like every time he tries, it just slides off." Linda brushed a strand of hair from her face. "That's what happens when the truth starts winning." Angela joined them on the steps, her briefcase in hand. "You should know," she said carefully. "Something came up in discovery." Linda's brow furrowed. "What now?" Angela opened her folder and pulled out a printed document. "A loan application, co-signed in both your names, filed 6 weeks after the wedding." Emily blinked. "I never signed anything." Angela nodded grimly. "That's what I thought." "He forged your signature, Emily. It's a $45,000 business loan he tried to secure using your joint credit line, probably assuming he'd get approval before I froze access." Emily's voice trembled. He stole my name." Linda's hand found her daughter's, gripping tight. "And now he's going to pay for it." Angela's tone was ice. "I've already contacted the loan officer. Fraud complaint will be filed by morning. Once this hits, his credibility in court vanishes." Emily sank onto the steps, her face buried in her hands. The weight of everything, the betrayal, the fear, the exhaustion, finally came out in a single shaky breath. "How did I ever love him?" Linda crouched beside her, brushing her back gently. "Because you were kind," she said softly, and he saw that as weakness. "But it's not. Not anymore." Angela checked her watch, her efficiency unbroken. "Once the fraud report is public, the case will shift in our favor. We'll file for expedited divorce proceedings. He won't see it coming." Linda looked out toward the street, where the city moved in its indifferent rhythm. People walking, cars passing, life continuing. "Good," she said quietly. "Let him feel what it's like to lose control." As they walked back toward Angela's car, the courthouse bell struck once, its echo carrying through the brisk Nashville air. Emily paused at the steps, the sunlight hitting her face just right, no longer soft or naive, but fierce. "He used to make me feel small," she said. "Now he feels small?" Linda smiled, pride and sorrow mingling in her expression. "That's called balance." They reached the car, the sound of traffic filling the space between them. Angela's phone buzzed. She checked it once, her expression darkening. "What is it?" Linda asked. Angela turned the screen toward them. It was a screenshot of a post, Brandon's newest declaration, tagged with Emily's name. "She's lying about everything. Wait until the truth comes out." Linda exhaled slowly. "He's still digging his own grave." Angela pocketed her phone, her voice calm. "Then we'll hand him the shovel." The letterhead at the top of the document gleamed in Angela Ruiz's office light. Bank of Tennessee, Fraud Investigation Division. The words beneath it were even better. "Formal fraud complaint filed. Applicant, Brandon Hayes. Cosigner, forged." Angela's voice was cool and crisp as she read the report aloud. The handwriting analysis came back. The signature's a clear fake. They've confirmed full liability lies with him. Linda allowed herself one slow breath of satisfaction. "So Emily's in the clear?" "Completely," Angela said. "The loan company's dropping pursuit. They'll file civil recovery against Brandon directly. His credit's about to implode." Across the desk, Emily blinked back tears of relief. "So it's over?" Angela gave a small, knowing smile. "Financially, yes. Emotionally, that's up to you." Linda reached across the desk and took her daughter's hand, squeezing gently. "He can't touch you anymore. Not your name. Not your future." Angela gathered her folders, efficient to the last. "He'll come crawling for sympathy soon. They always do when the walls close in. Just don't open the door." Linda's reply was simple. "He won't find it unlocked." By late afternoon, the Nashville heat had given way to a soft orange sunset. Linda moved around her kitchen with deliberate ease, setting the table with her mother's old china. It wasn't celebration. It was something quieter, steadier, closure. Kendra arrived first, armed with a pitcher of homemade sangria and her usual flair. "It's official," she declared, setting it on the counter. "I brought liquid justice." Linda smirked. "You know there's a difference between justice and fruit wine, right?" "Not after the second glass." Kendra shot back, pouring two immediately. Angela joined them a few minutes later, files in hand, though she set them aside untouched. "I promised myself I'd stay 5 minutes," she said, "but I suspect I'll stay for 2 hours." "Good," Linda said. "We've earned it." The door creaked open and Emily stepped in, hair loose, wearing one of her old bakery aprons. For the first time in weeks, she didn't look haunted, just tired, human, free. Kendra grinned. "Look who remembered how to smile." Emily blushed. "Don't make it weird." "Too late," Kendra said, clinking her glass against Linda's, "to surviving idiots and starting over." They ate slowly, laughter weaving through the conversation like background music. Angela even smiled, a small, genuine thing, as she recounted how the bank's legal team had practically tripped over themselves, apologizing to Emily once the forgery came to light. "He thought he was smarter than the system," Angela said, leaning back, but paperwork never lies. It's poetic, really. Emily's laughter was soft at first, then grew fuller, warm, unguarded. Linda watched her daughter's shoulders finally relax and felt something inside her loosen too. Halfway through dessert, a knock sounded at the door. Linda exchanged a quick glance with Kendra, who instinctively set down her glass. But when Linda opened the door, it wasn't Brandon standing there. It was Officer Pete Langston. He tipped his hat politely. "Evening, ladies." "Pete," Linda said, heart easing a fraction. "You're just in time. We've got sangria." Pete smiled faintly. "Tempting, but I'm on duty." His tone shifted. "Got news, though. Thought you'd want to hear it from me." Linda stepped aside to let him in. "What kind of news?" Pete pulled a folded sheet from his breast pocket. "Brandon was picked up this afternoon. He tried to sweet-talk a bank manager into reversing the fraud report. Walked in there all confidence and charm. Walked out in handcuffs." Kendra let out a low whistle. "Guess charm doesn't cash checks." Emily's hand flew to her mouth. "He's arrested?" "For questioning officially," Pete said. "But from what I hear, they've got enough to hold him. Financial fraud, falsified documents, harassment, all stacking up." Linda's voice was calm, almost eerily so. "Then it's catching up to him." Pete nodded. "He'll post bond, probably. But the DA's already interested." "Angela," he added, tipping his chin toward her. "You might be getting a call soon." Angela smirked. "I'll answer." Pete tucked the paper away. "Just figured you all deserved a quiet night without wondering where he is. For now, he's not your problem." Emily exhaled, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. But this time, they were different. Lighter. Linda guided her back to the table, voice soft but sure. "Sit down, honey. Let the world handle him for once." Pete lingered in the doorway, his hat in hand. "He'll learn fast that some women are better protected than they look." Kendra raised her glass. "To that?" He chuckled and left, the sound of his cruiser fading into the summer dusk. For a long while they just sat. Linda, Emily, Kendra, Angela, bathed in the gentle light of the kitchen, the clink of glasses and the hum of the refrigerator filling the quiet. Then, as laughter resumed, Linda's phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. She hesitated. Angela's eyes met hers. "Don't answer." But Linda did. Slowly. Static filled the line first. Then a man's voice. Weak. Hoarse, but unmistakable. "You think you've won?" Brandon rasped. "But you don't understand. I'm not done yet." The line went dead. Emily's smile vanished. "Was that—" Linda set the phone down carefully, her expression unreadable. "Yes." Kendra swallowed. "He's calling from jail?" Angela stood, eyes sharp again. "Or he's already out." The room fell silent. The clock ticked. Linda looked toward the window where the porch light flickered once, then steadied. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. "If he wants a war, he'll get one." The morning air was crisp enough to bite. A thin fog rolled low over East Nashville, softening the streets, muting the sound of early traffic. Inside Palmer's bakery, the lights glowed warm and golden against the chill. Linda moved through the kitchen with slow, practiced rhythm, measuring flour, warming butter, setting out trays. The first batch of coffee brewed quietly in the corner, the smell rich and steady. It was still an hour before opening, and for once, the silence felt like peace, not loneliness. The old radio hummed faintly on the shelf, tuned to a country station that played more static than song. She didn't change it. The noise felt human. A faint knock at the door startled her. When she turned, Emily stood on the other side of the glass, bundled in a wool coat, holding a manila envelope against her chest. Linda unlocked the door. "You're early," she said, smiling softly. "So are you," Emily replied, her voice calm, her eyes clearer than they'd been in months. I wanted to give you this in person. Linda nodded toward the envelope. The papers? Emily exhaled, her breath fogging the air. Signed, sealed, notarized. Official as of this morning. Linda took the envelope carefully, setting it beside the register. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. How do you feel? Emily gave a small, incredulous laugh. Lighter. Scared, but lighter. Linda reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's face. That's what freedom feels like, sweetheart. A little empty at first. They stood there for a quiet moment, the coffee machine clicking behind them. The only other sound was the distant rumble of a city waking up. Angela called, Emily said. Brandon's lawyer withdrew. The fraud case is moving forward, but the rest? She hesitated. He's kind of disappeared. Linda's voice was even. That's not a bad thing. He's not posting, not calling, nothing. Emily frowned. It's weird, after everything. It's like he fell off the face of the earth. Linda turned back to her baking, sliding a tray of scones into the oven. Some men don't know how to survive when they can't control someone, she said. Let him disappear. He finally learned what silence feels like. Emily nodded slowly, and for the first time, she didn't argue. By mid-morning, sunlight spilled through the front windows, catching the dust in gold beams. Customers trickled in, the regulars first, then a few curious faces drawn by the smell of cinnamon and vanilla. Linda moved easily between the counter and the kitchen, smiling at each order, her movements fluid and unhurried. It wasn't joy exactly. It was steadiness. Something stronger. Between customers, she wiped her hands and noticed a small white envelope tucked beneath the register. No return address. Just her name in looping, careful handwriting. She slid it open with a butter knife and pulled out a folded card. Dear Mrs. Palmer, the donation from the Palmer Fund for Renewal came through this week. Because of you, we were able to reopen our kitchen program. Your husband's legacy still feeds people. Thank you. The note was signed by the director of the women's shelter, someone Linda hadn't seen in nearly a decade. A lump rose in her throat before she could stop it. She reached for her phone, opened her banking app, and without hesitation sent another donation. This time she left the memo line blank. Some gifts didn't need explanation. When she looked up, Kendra was leaning against the doorway, coffee in one hand, scarf looped loosely around her neck. You're doing it again, she said with a grin. Donating before breakfast? Linda smiled faintly. He'd want me to. Kendra stepped forward and squeezed her shoulder. Then he'd be proud. Hell, I'm proud. Linda laughed softly, shaking her head. You always know what to say. That's because I don't bake. I talk, Kendra said, mock serious. It's my craft. They both laughed, the sound echoing through the quiet bakery. Outside, the early autumn sun climbed higher, burning away the fog. The maple trees along the street had just started to turn, their leaves catching fire in the light. A truck passed by, its radio blaring, and then the world settled back into its soft, familiar hum. Kendra finished her coffee, set the cup on the counter, and pulled Linda into a hug that was quick but fierce. It's over, she murmured. You did it. Linda closed her eyes briefly. We did it. When Kendra left, Linda stood at the doorway for a long time, watching the street. The bakery sign swayed gently in the breeze, its paint a little worn but still bright. Across the road, a young couple walked hand in hand, laughing. Life kept going. It always did. She turned the sign on the door to open, letting the scent of coffee drift out into the street. Emily was in the back, humming as she stacked muffin trays. The world hadn't changed, not really. But Linda had. She wiped her hands on her apron and looked out at the morning sky, gold spilling over the rooftops, clouds like quiet brushstrokes. Her husband's memory lived in the warmth of the ovens, in the customers' smiles, in her daughter's laughter. And the man who had tried to destroy that, he was just noise now, fading into the background. The bell above the door rang as the first customer of the day walked in. Linda smiled, soft but certain. "He tried to humiliate me," she murmured under her breath, the words tasting like victory, like closure. I turned his insult into silence. And for the first time in a long time, Linda felt the quiet wasn't empty. It was hers.